Please give your applause, firstly, to Mark Edwards.
Thank you very much. I suppose I'd rather people drifted on than drifted off while I'm talking, so that sounds good. First of all, what a fantastic site. Real people in a building for a conference. So thank you, everybody, for coming. Inevitably, I'm going to try and work some technology, and despite looking very youthful, I'm sure, I am one of those dinosaurs with the grey hairs, so let's see if this can work. So I did put together a few thoughts in order to sum up State of the Nation. Inevitably, if we are talking about the last year or so, there is only one word which can sum it up suitably, which would be pandemic. But almost certainly, we would get overly depressed if we featured too much on the pandemic. So we'd like to move to the post-pandemic era. But with prices rising, with labour shortages that we've heard about, with a fourth wave having its full force across Europe, as Chancellor Merkel says, perhaps it's too early to really believe in the post-pandemic. So our attention needs to be on planning for the post-pandemic. What are the key things that we need to worry about? Number one, which we've heard loud and clear already, people. But depending on your particular angle in your business, people could mean one of two things: employees or customers. On employees, there is no doubt we are in a war for talent. Employees are after more than they were before. Costs, of course, are rising, but at the same time, we need to be efficient to manage those costs. We know that people want more training, and yet we know that turnover is incredibly high. People want a sense of culture and belonging, but is that really achievable when we're struggling with everything else that we're trying to do? Apprenticeships almost certainly are an answer, but we need to broaden our imagination on what we want to train people in. The skills that are going to excite people going forward will be training in change management, in technology and its adoption, perhaps even its critical assessment of where it adds value, and in process improvement. And this, I'm pleased to say, we can offer at all levels in all of our businesses. If job vacancies are at an all-time high, but we have a 10% labour shortage, something needs to be done. So we have our first paradox of the post-pandemic era, that we need to put more into people, but they cost us more and we need to be more efficient. So managing this paradox is going to be a priority. If we think about customers, we know that experience is key, and that experience is going to be more important than ever before. We are living in a world of hyper-connectivity. Not that long ago, we had a relatively clear pyramidic structure to communication. One person tells two people, tells six people, etc. Then we go to mass messaging. But now we have the world in which influence is more important than diktat. We can't tell people what to expect. They need to be nudged into what we want them to believe. So influence is one of the most important things for us to follow. But how do we balance individual experience and wanting someone to share that with the fact that hyper-customization means different people have different experiences? Or to turn that a different way round, if you have very high turnover, how do you get the consistency that people crave when they stay in our venues or eat at our restaurants, drink in our bars? The next P is property. And in discussions with people at the moment, we have this fantastic situation where some of the properties that just a few years ago were somewhat unloved, regional properties that no one would quite back in the same way as those city centres, they are now the highlights, the top performers, the ones that we can believe in. Staycation is to the rescue. But what does that mean longer term? Is that here to stay? As we go through a period of shoring up balance sheets and refinancing, let's make sure that we are not committing to something that is not in the long term, or potentially even medium term, but that is well thought through and flexible. Everybody will have changed or considered the use of their property over the last 18 months, trying to maximise the return from every square inch that you have. But let's really consider what the long-term position is going to be and how flexible we need to be over the next 18 months. My next P, process. Process and technology. We hear a lot about technology, and we'll hear a lot more over the next few hours. And what have we learnt? Well, it's vital. But one can't help thinking that technology previously has been considered primarily about data and about what we can do to help people have a greater experience. People have been collecting data for some time, such that we have data lakes, or maybe even oceans. But in a lake, you could drown. In an ocean, you could be lost at sea. So it isn't about now having the information, it's about what you do with it. That is going to be harder for operators to get right, and so almost certainly a greater need for professionals who can really take data, analyse it, and put it to the best use. There is also a second piece around technology, which people are beginning to realise more strongly, which is that quite often the best form of technology that our customers are going to have is in their pocket rather than in your room or in your site. So how do we get to that? How do we maximise the technology that people already have? So we have information, but do we have the time to do something with it? Do we have the people to do something with it? Another paradox. I am an accountant, although I'm not going to talk about super deductions, but my colleague James, I'm sure, will if you wish to find out about it. So I inevitably will consider profit, another P. Traditionally, we've talked about occupancy versus rate strategy, and we are, of course, at that time where everyone in the room will be talking about holding their rate. And in 6 months' time, we hope that that remains the case, because we know how long it takes to recover rate. But I think ADR, RevPAR, TrevPAR, as important as they have been, are going to be more and more blunt if considered purely as averages. Almost certainly, as we see a change in people's working patterns, a change in what they're looking for in their experiences, we're going to find a situation where we need to be more adaptable with how we appeal to people. So the ADR might be variable across a week in a very different way from how it used to be, different day parts being important. Indeed, if you look across the bar sector, Sundays are more important than Friday evenings in a lot of cases now. This wouldn't have been imagined pre-pandemic. Are we really capturing this idea of a Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday worker, whatever acronym you might think of for them? So every guest in a hotel needs to be offered more. Our paradox for profit is that some of the decisions we'll be making over the next 18 months might not be quite right, but our leaders need to be supported to be adaptable rather than blamed. My next P is purpose. We've heard already about the importance of purpose, but make no mistake, this is going to be critical going forward. 45% of consumers are already saying they are making more sustainable choices when shopping or choosing how to spend discretionary monies. 60% of young consumers now consider ethical values and authenticity before making any spending choice. This isn't just about environmental priorities, of course. The social responsibility, the comfort of the governance structure, the belief, authenticity of our operations are critical. But it does make me wonder whether that will lead to an increase in some kind of localism, some kind of belief that maybe the independent has its time back, that it may be harder for a brand to establish purpose being genuine and authentic in any individual site than it could be for others. On the other hand, the resources may well sit with brand. So, our paradox, the strength and opportunity of a brand versus the real appeal and opportunity of purpose. So I conclude by saying, I think you have a choice. I think your choice over the next 18 months and beyond is that you try and perfectly predict what is going to happen. If you do so, then good luck to you, you will do very well. But the reality is most of us need to prepare for an era of paradox, where nothing will be straightforward or simple, and where we're going to have to learn to live with ever-increasing change. That is our state of the nation. Ultimately, proper post-pandemic planning is what will prevent poor performance. I wish you all the very, very best for 2022 and beyond, and thank you very much.